Hello, everyone. Welcome to the bonus episode of my podcast, Economic Charcha Insights on India. And today I have a very special guest with me who is also a fellow podcaster and an economics enthusiast. He saw this gap, where we didn't have a lot of podcast on economics, and especially in the Marathi language. And that's why he started his podcast, Econ Galil Marathi Podcast. He's also a blogger and a content writer. He has received top voice in LinkedIn in economics as well as in writing. And now he's ventured into a new area, which is making YouTube shorts on various topics related to economics, finance, and a lot more. And I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome, Swapnil.
Thank you, Saumya. Thank you very much. And yes, this is really a special episode because uh, as I am guest on your podcast, you are guest on my podcast too. So welcome on my podcast. And Saumya is a chartered accountant. She is economics lover. She is also a podcaster. So all these things match really well between us, and that's why we decided to come together on this particular platform and at least start with this one episode about what we like about different things in content creation and everything. So she has a podcast named Economic Charcha that you just heard from her, and she also loves public speaking. She has also shared her journey as Toastmasters on LinkedIn, and she has found her new love with the business case studies, and that is going to be the topic of her next podcast. And that is something which I'm really interested. I've listened her previous podcast of Economic Charcha, and that is really interesting, and I'm really eager and waiting for what's going to happen in the next podcast. So welcome, Soumya, and let's have a fun chat.
Thank you so much. And that I think I missed a point that he's also a fellow chartered accountant. Now, my first question is out of curiosity, like how a chartered accountant got into the profile of content creation. I mean, how did that transition happen?
I was working as an economist at a broking firm, and I was always, fond of writing. So I was writing my blog, and I didn't get time to write a lot. And at one particular point in time in my career, I decided that, okay, let's leave the job and, I'll focus on something that I love, which is, and like after COVID, many people had that kind of craze or wave and something like that. And I was the part of it. So, yeah, let's see, like, if the verdict is not yet out, if it is the successful or not successful, but yes, I'm just trying hard to make my name in it. But I just thought that, okay, let's start with writing, and suddenly a thought about podcast also came into my mind. So I planned accordingly that, okay, I'll start with Marathi podcast, which is not what a lot of people do. Not a lot of people talk about economics in Marathi, especially. So I just thought
Yes.
that, okay, let's start that. It is going on for now 2 years, and the first love is basically the writing. So I like writing,
Hmm.
and then with writing you have to think about different modes of communication also, and I thought that podcast is something which will be that might go hand in hand. So that's the start of my journey. What about yours? How did you start?
I think for me it was part of my Toastmaster project. They had given a lot of options, and podcasting was just getting popular in India. I think earlier there was audio podcast, and we have video podcast also now. So I decided to venture into that. I mean, I had absolutely no idea. I attended one of these sessions by Vijay Gupta, by Vijay Speaks. He has this page by that name, and I decided to go for it. That's why the initial ones are, a little not that great. But then as we go ahead, I have, learned that skill of turning data into a story. And if you
Yeah.
talk about the subject, like why economics, so I remember attending this session in March when the budget data come in,
Hmm.
and I absolutely fell in love with the economic analysis that they did. And I
Hmm.
realized that I know very less about Indian economics and I want to explore that. And I thought, okay, let's search for a good podcast on them. So there are very
Hmm.
less podcasts in English for economics, and even though they were there, they had like stopped beyond 6 or 10 episodes.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's when I decided that this is the topic that I want to choose, and hence economic charcha. So that's
yeah.
how my journey was there.
Nice.
Like, what about you? How did you enter into from podcasting to YT shorts?
So it's all about, right now our attention spans have gone
Hmm.
lesser and lesser, and we are hooked up on, Instagram reels. We are just swiping up every now and then. And I realized that, okay, podcast might, give me some reach, but there is a chance that if I explore this YouTube video or
Hmm.
Instagram reels and all those things, I'll get, a better reach. And it's I'm not that comfortable with doing that, as in, if you have seen my initial takes, it's not
Yes.
good at all. So I just edited a lot of things and I uploaded the final take, which I thought that, okay, now I can stop doing it, because after a point it's tiring. So then just uploaded
Yes.
it. The main reason is, I want to convey stories, I want to convey data, I want to convey important stuff happening around us. And
Hmm.
yes, writing is one thing, podcasting is another thing. But nowadays, if people are watching reels, then I think, as a business service provider or as an entrepreneur, I thought
Hmm.
that, okay, now it's my time to, just go where the customers are.
That's really amazing. True, you always have to change yourself. Every business does that. So
Yes.
why not
Yes.
content creation?
Yes. So, one thing I just found interesting that you said, that your initial podcast was not that great, but like after practicing and after doing a lot of things,
Hmm.
you became good at it. I also experienced the same thing while I was writing, while I was podcasting, and as I've told, with regard to videos also. So now I'm
Hmm.
getting a bit better at everything, slowly, slowly. But I thought that this is something which is really important for, you know in any field, but in content creation, I think it is more important to
Yes.
just go on doing a lot of things, and getting better each day. I would like to hear your experience about, because you have just started. So,
That is so true. Like I remember that when I was writing my first episode, so
hmm,
I was on a little break from my one job to another job. And
hmm,
I took so much time. I mean, I
yeah,
kept on reading the data. I mean, it was a limited data, but I kept on reading different parts of it, and somehow I got lost because there was so much information. But I wanted to give just this much in a podcast because, as you said, we have an attention span problem.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think it took me a lot of time to understand that, how I should do my research, how I can use that time. Because with job, it gets very difficult to find out time for the podcast, shortlist the data and then record it. You keep on writing, as you said, you keep on writing, you keep on researching on better ways. And then for me, what works is what actually I'm going to share in my next post also, how you
hmm,
can research better. So the
ah,
trick which works for me is writing the specific questions that I want answers to in my podcast. Like I remember I did this for the podcast on space.
hmm,
So
hmm,
mine was very set. I want to give a brief history, where in the world it started, then what was India's take on it, how did India develop, and talk about the recent startups. That's it. It
yeah,
took me way lesser time. And when you find out tricks about this, write it down so you remember it also for your next podcast, and then able to release the podcast way sooner because you're taking less time to research. So I
hmm,
think that helps. And what other thing which helped is listening to other podcast. Like I listen to
correct,
your
correct,
podcast, I listen to some more podcast too. So it gave me idea, okay, no, this is how I can improve myself, this is something which
right,
was
right,
lacking. And
right,
eventually you get better. You just have to put at it. You can't give up when it's not good enough or you're not getting enough reach. You have to consistently put efforts, because I've
yeah,
seen that my listens have gone up with every episode. So
yeah.
yeah, that's what worked for me. What about you?
Nice. I think are similar only, because I personally devote a lot of time in research only, and sometimes I get lost in research, and
That's so true.
things never come out, because I think like there are many episodes, many things that are in, pipeline only for a long period of time. And because I'm not sure if, I'm not that confident ki, okay, if that
You're
particular
not
research,
happy, you're complete.
ha,
Yes.
it feels incomplete. So I think that, okay,
Hmm.
let's do something else and move on to other thing. I think a lot of it's kind of a CA trait also. I don't know if, but I might be generalizing it. But we are not happy, easily. We want
Yes.
to achieve some kind of perfection कि नहीं नहीं यार थोड़ा और अच्छा दिखते हैं, थोड़ा 10-12 और sources ढूंढ लेते हैं, and then just make it
Yeah.
fine tune it or brush it up a little. But over the time I have really improved in terms of research. Pointers at the beginning help a lot, as in there's a direction like how to research, how to do all those things. And personally, apart from research, I've found that I'm taking lesser time in editing now, and I take lesser takes nowadays. So that is also something which is going good, at least for me.
That is so good, yaar. And what do you think about the, current status of the financial influencers or the financial content creators which are there? And like, where do you stand with them?
It is good that there is this kind of new opportunity for financial professionals or people who are well aware of finance to come out and speak on these issues or these things. But I think there is a lot of problem also nowadays because of misselling, misinformation, because of a
Hmm,
lot of
yes.
Instagram reels I've seen in the past couple of weeks, and people are talking rubbish. I feel sometimes it's like it
Some of
doesn't
them are,
it
yes.
doesn't make sense, like to talk about. We won't name obviously, but if that kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? Whom we are talking about, like any other profession or any other media related things where people, there is a good traction in particular thing, a lot of crap will also increase. But over the time things will settle down, and people will understand whom to trust, whom to listen to, whom to watch.
Yeah.
And slowly that process will help, at least it will help us, because we don't engage in that kind of things. So at least in the
Yes.
long run I feel it will help us who are
Yeah.
genuinely making efforts to give out more information.
Obviously, I mean, people who are, not just copying the other content
Yeah.
creators, giving the same content. Like, similarly, I have found this reel of,
Huh.
not paying for a paper bag on a mall if its name is written on it by 4 to 5
Huh.
content creators at the same time. I was like, what the hell? You're a chartered accountant, that's what we are promoting. But
Yeah.
some of the other content was really good. But having this repetitive content by so many of the creators, it's just
Yeah.
so irritating. And I feel
Right.
that if we were given like, if at school we would have learned about financial literacy, we
Yeah.
would have even learned it, like we have not really studied that so much even in CA. We just read the theoretical part.
Yeah.
If we have got a chance to study that in school, or in our further studies, we would be able to differentiate between what is the good content and
Hmm.
what is not so good, something we can just see, ignore, and not get too much worked up on that. I
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
feel there is a gap, but definitely there are very good finance content creators also out there. Like, I really love, for the business case studies part, I really love Think School. I mean, they take out
Hmm.
the current news, they go back to the time, like why this particular event is so important. Then there is this podcast, WTF podcast, by Nikhil Kamath, which is also doing really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. That is really good.
What type of content have you consumed over the years, and how much has it changed?
Uh, Content wise, I think my colleague introduced me to podcast called Seen and Unseen by Amit Verma, and it the podcast was all about economics, public policy, and current affairs, some social issues, and all those things. He was hosting like 2 hours podcast. Now that podcast length on average is around 5 to 7 hours. So, and like it's really deep and engaging. So there are couple of things which I feel like, on one hand, I feel that okay, our attention spans are going lesser and lesser. But
Hmm.
if there is something that deep and that interesting, people will listen for, even 7 hours. And my
Yeah,
journey has been like that. I have been listening to long form podcasts, but now recently, since I'm doing that reels and everything, I have started consuming the reels format also.
that's true. So, I guess I have few favorites. I've said like
Hmm.
Think School is there. Then WTF, it's become one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Then I also like Business Breakdowns, but it is for
Yeah.
international businesses. It has
International.
covered very less our Indian businesses.
Hmm.
And then, to be honest, I'm very new to podcast. I recently
Hmm.
only started listening to it. Then we have Diary of a Young CEO. So that I
Yeah.
started listening after one of my friend's suggestions, and it is actually quite insightful. Like, it is the deep conversations,
Hmm.
and when you listen to it, you always learn something new about either your personality or
Right.
or about your relationships with other people, and not just a romantic one, but with your peers, with your colleagues. So there are a lot of insightful conversations there too. I
Yeah.
think that is what should be there in a podcast. I mean, you listen to a conversation, you
Hmm.
relate to that person, or you get out and you learn something new. That's what
Yeah.
I feel should be there in every podcast. There should be a what, there
Right.
should be a why, there should be a
Hmm.
how. These things, like, it cannot be about the psychological aspects, but for economic or finance aspects, I want that if I'm listening to something, I need to understand the what, why, and how of
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
anything financial was happening. Like, why
Correct.
is it happening? Why all of a sudden? How it happened? And what exactly happened? What are the consequences? So I
Hmm.
can get an overview idea. So I that can actually be a conversation point when I'm talking to someone. So I'm not going with a half-baked knowledge.
Correct.
I understood the whole scenario, and that's what I'm going. So I feel that is what is lacking in some of the contents, and I try really hard that I can incorporate this whenever I'm recording one of my podcasts.
Right, right. So, what according to you should be, at least, like, we will talk about finance podcast or economics podcast
Hmm.
only. So, what according to you should be there in a good podcast, or how to identify a good podcast? If you want to suggest people, like, okay, this is a good podcast.
Hmm.
Why do you feel that this particular podcast is a good podcast, or anything, any kind of content,
Which
writing
sets it
or
apart?
Instagram reel or anything?
I think, like, if we talk about, content, reading, anything, I feel like, the questions that these three questions are able to answer, they're able
Mm-hmm.
to make the data interesting. Like, we
Got it.
read on, we have fin shots. Even if it's the most complicated topic, they kind of make it very easy in a way that they explain the concept in the beginning.
Hmm.
And then they tell you the whole event that happened. Now, if I was someone who was just not a finance person, I was just going to read that content newspaper, I'll be like, nahi samajh mein aaya, like what just happened?
Ha.
But then if I get to know a brief about what that event, what does that mean, and then read the whole news, I'll be able to understand it better. So for me, any content, be it finance or economics, which can be understood by everyone, is a good
Mm-hmm.
content. Something which is not, just trying to sell you something,
Yeah.
even though they are not the consumers, they're just trying to sell you things, is not a good content for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess something which is a lot of, they make it too fancy or too much acting, that's something I can't just tolerate. Like, let's be serious, this is a serious topic. You can make it
Yeah.
fun,
Yeah.
but don't make
Yeah.
it into a joke.
Yeah.
Don't mix too much drama into it. So
True.
that for
True.
me is like a strict no-no. Like, one person like, that's just, I can't tolerate that at all.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about you? Like, what are your views on this?
Yeah. 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 I absolutely agree on that part. Like, I hate, like, people are,
I
coming
can sense
on
that in you.
coming on screen with a wig or with kind of a shosha and everything, like, and they
Yeah,
are
that's
just,
good for entertainment
yeah,
content, but not,
yeah.
I feel, for
Yeah,
finance.
yeah. As in, you then say that you are going to prepare an entertainment content with a bits of finance into it, but don't say that you are a financial influencer or something like that, because
Hmm.
nobody is going to understand the concept, or nobody is going to understand what you are
Yes.
speaking in depth. If, say, for example, if someone is selling a product, and they are telling like
Hmm.
any banking product, insurance product, anything. And before selling that, that's the usual scene, right? People will start enact some kind of, they will make some drama out of it, and then at last they will say that, okay, this is the product, follow this guy, follow that girl, and take this particular product and be happy, whatever. But I think that the you are not explained what exactly it is. You have not explained
Yeah,
the risks
how it will
involved in
help
it,
me.
how, yeah, how
Hmm.
that is going to help, and like the both sides, right? Because a lot of things are paid content, which I feel kind of, again, we have spoken about the mis-selling of it, and
Hmm.
that that hampers the financial literacy. And as in the country where we are in, like already the financial literacy is low, and if you are doing such
It's
kind
just
of,
21%.
yeah, and if we are doing some kind of this content and selling random things to random people who do not have any knowledge, and they are following you maybe because of finance, but now you are giving them entertainment also, right? So many people might follow just for entertainment sake also, who knows, right? So
Hmm.
then how they are going to, as in, I feel there's
Learn
a lot,
something new, yes.
yeah, there's a lot of risks involved in it. I don't know, like
Hmm.
sometimes it feels frustrated, and I don't know what
That
to
is so
do.
true.
Yeah,
I think it is our responsibility as CAs and as finance creators to give
yeah,
genuine information so that we can at least elevate that literacy levels and not
correct.
bring it back down.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's also the trust issue which happens. I tell you something, I try to sell something, and it goes
Mhm.
wrong. Like I remember some time back this happened. There was this conference type of thing which happened. I don't know if you know that news. In Delhi it was there, a lot of good influencers
Mhm.
advertised that, and turned
Yeah.
out that whole meeting was a sham. They collected money from people. They were like, okay,
Yes,
so many
yes.
people are going to come in. I mean, that
Yeah,
is the
yeah, yeah.
classic case of this. It's going to result into trust deficit. People are
Correct.
not going to trust influencers at all if we keep on doing this. I think
True.
I was shocked by that incident. Like so many influencers went ahead with that without
Yeah,
looking in depth of the actions. I mean, if you're influencing something, if you have 5 lakh followers, you are responsible to those 5 lakh on giving them right information. And if you're not doing that, I think you're just putting everyone down with you. That's what I
yeah,
felt.
yeah.
Now let's talk about, what is the scope of finance content creation, for anyone who wants to come into this field?
If you ask me, I'll say that the reels are obviously the trending part, and people can
Hmm.
do it. But as we have said, like which are the good ones, and what to do and what not to do. This is the boundaries we have already set. So I would
Yes.
definitely recommend people to, just follow it. Otherwise, it's going to be messy. But other main thing I think is doing the homework properly. And even if you are in any format, I think the main thing, at least in terms of financial product, is that you have to tell people both sides. If you are selling, even if it is a paid partnership, I think in paid partnership, I don't know, we have not come across a paid partnership, but actually, on that one, it's an interesting question, because now we have not come across any paid partnership. What will you do if you have a paid partnership? Someone approaches you and tells you that, okay, take this 1 lakh rupees and promote my product. Will you do it? I don't
Yeah,
know
I
my
would see
answer.
at the back of it, like I would see the complete thing. I would say, would I buy it? And if my answer is no, that I'm not going to buy it, no
Mhm.
matter how many people tell me to do it, I'm not going to do it.
Oh,
Because I think I read this somewhere that the most beautiful trait in someone can be honesty. And if
yeah,
I don't trust that product, I don't want that people buy it in my name and then trust deficit which happens. They don't trust me anymore.
right,
They don't
right.
trust my good decisions anymore. So I think, yeah, to answer that question, if it's something that I wouldn't buy, then I wouldn't recommend anyone that product.
That's really good. I think I will also do the same thing, but sometimes you don't know like what happens. You're right. As in,
Hmm.
because it's so risky, I think. I don't know how to approach, but yeah, yeah. Definitely, at least not. Even if I get, I won't be doing the drama, and hopefully,
That's
I'm.
for sure. Hopefully, that's not the demand that they have, that okay, you have to show it with a little bit of drama, then
Yeah,
only
yeah,
you'll be able to sell it. But
yeah.
I think there are serious content writers also out there. You will
Mhm.
get a little less popularity, but it's
Yeah,
definitely there.
yeah,
And if we talk about the economic side, like I always end my episode with saying, you should do this because it helps the economy.
yeah.
Guess what? Content creation also does. So I got this data of 2021 that YouTube and the other platforms created 10,000 crores of revenue for India. That's
Wow.
how the content creators have earned, and it's only going up from here. Like from 6,000 crores in 2020 to 10,000 crores in 2021. I think post COVID, it's just increasing, and there are a lot of reasons for that. Our middle income people are increasing, the internet penetration is
Yeah.
increasing, so all these things in the future are just going to go up. So if you want to go into content creation, this is the right time. And with that, I would ask Swapnil, like, what tips would you go give to the new content creators?
Staying honest is something which, as we discussed, why one should stay honest is very required in any business you are in. But in content creation, it is more important because if you become a big influencer, people will make decisions about different things, and you will be responsible for that decision. So I think main crux will be honesty for sure. What about you?
I think, yeah, and being having a good idea of why you're entering this,
Hmm.
and then a bit clear idea on what type of content you're giving. Have network of people. I mean, when I was starting out my podcast, I saw his podcast economics. I reached out to him. He gave
Yeah,
me a lot of tips on how I can improve myself, and having small peer group of content creators that can help you out at
yeah.
steps, so that also helps a lot.
Huh.
So I would definitely suggest, listening to this episode, a WTF podcast by Nikhil Kamath, and this episode talks about content creation. So they have Tanmay Bhatt, Prajakta Kohli, and Ranveer Ahluwalia, who has been recording content since 5 to 10 years. So they
Yeah.
have been there so long. Still give you a lot of insights on how this field has been continuously changing. If you want to go into this field.
Yeah, I think that episode is really good, and I think, and because like if the best of the best start giving you some advice, I think we should be taking that advice. And one more thing I would like to highlight in this at the end is that if you are a content creator into this category, please reach out to us, and we will be happy to
Yes.
collaborate on different opportunities, and we'll have fun basically, and let's start exploring and let's help each other. Yeah, matlab, otherwise
Yes.
nobody will grow together. As they say, together we
We can
can
reach grades.
reach. Yeah, and let's
Let's
have a
collaborate.
collaborate. Yeah, yeah, we are happy to do it.
Yeah.
And we will give all the information of our social media handles and everything in the description, so you can ping us, you can message us, you can email us, whatever you want, and we will be happy to collaborate with you.
Be it a new creator, be it someone experienced, so we can learn from them.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully, we can help each other out and, grow even more.
Yeah, and if
So,
you have some gigs also, jobs also, freelance things also, so please reach out to us. So
so yeah, that is the end of the podcast. Don't forget, as I always say, don't forget to like my episode, follow the channel, and do share it with all your friends if you liked it.
yes, yes, and remember you are part of two podcasts today, not just one.
Yes.
It's two podcasts. So
Yes.
like everywhere, both the podcasts, anywhere you are listening, watching, and yeah, that is it.
Same here, so so good to have you here.
Thank you, Soumya, and it
Goodbye,
was
everyone.
really good. Yes, goodbye.